All right, good morning. It's Wednesday, 21st May 2025, and of course, it's my pleasure to welcome you to your news and current affairs program, reaching you live from our Lagos Network studios on the ITV network. I am Joshua Okata. Of course, today we'll be looking at several issues making the round, especially with regards to the corruption and bias in Nigeria judiciary as alleged by the former governor, El-Rufai. The former governor, El-Rufai, is in the news again. This time he has shifted attention away from the Asiwaju-led administration and of course its political vehicle, the All Progressive Congress, to now focus on the judiciary. Of course, the former governor, who is known to be very, very aggressive in terms of his controversial statement and of course being very expressive, has left no stone unturned, especially at the recently concluded conference organized by the Nigerian Bar Association, where he heavily came down on the judiciary, accusing it of being very much infiltrated by corrupt judges and lawyers who have made the institution seem more like a cash and carry of some sort, making the justice system completely very much inaccessible and unavailable to the common man who has seen the judicial system as the last hope for him. Now, to have this conversation with me this morning, I'm being joined by my guest in the person of Dakpo Adaramewa. He is a social affairs analyst who is here to provide his perspective on the matter. Good morning, Mr. Dakpo, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, now let's look at the issue at hand. The former governor, El-Rufai, who is known to be very much expressive and of course controversial in some of his statements, was invited by the NBA. Was it somewhat a miscalculation given his personality as someone who doesn't spare anything when it comes to saying it the way it is, especially considering the fact as to how he lashed at the NBA? What's your thought on that?
I think, if anything, it's evidence of the fact that there are definitely some good lawyers out there. There are members of the judiciary who have integrity, and the fact that they would invite somebody who could be critical shows that there are elements. It doesn't mean what he's saying is not true, but it shows that there are still elements who still believe in honesty, who still believe in integrity, and who uphold the very values of the professions. Because I doubt there are many other spheres where people would allow a potential critic speak. I doubt at an APC conference he will be allowed to speak. I doubt at a PDP conference he will be allowed to speak. You know, everybody tends to create an echo chamber where they want a particular narrative of themselves being told. And the fact that the NBA would take this step is in fact evidence of the fact that there are still good elements within them. But that doesn't mean that all is well and all is rosy.
All right, while staying on the matter where you alluded to the fact that we could still find, some very good judges and of course lawyers who have a very high integrity, it doesn't remove the fact that the justice system is more like a tree having so much of bad fruit in a particular branch. And then looking at the accusation he leveled on the judiciary, what's your take as regards the fact that he has now brought out or emboldened what we already know post 2023 election? What's your take on that?
I mean, the suggestion that there are corrupt judges is not new. I think looking at previous election tribunals and how things went and how interpretations of basic laws about the transmission of results were seemingly changed. I mean, I'm not a lawyer myself, but I do understand English, So the concept that there are corrupt judges is not new. It is something that, in all honesty, all politicians have said. The current president at some point in his career would have said something similar. I know the leader of the opposition, Peter Obi himself, has said something similar. I think one of the things he said was that during his time, he won the tribunal from the comfort of his home and he didn't have to pay anybody. He said, but in Nigeria of today, that would not be possible. So we know that these things happen. We all see it around us. And El-Rufai pushing it forward does not give it any more, shall we say, veracity. Because while he was part of the APC, and they administered this country for 8 years, we saw rulings that were very questionable during that time. We saw, it would seem, favorable treatment of their party and their party members by certain judicial members or judges. So it's interesting to see this cycle of people of the same stock turning around when it doesn't. It's only cheating in Nigeria, by our standard. It's only cheating when it's not in your favor.
Talking about it's only cheating when it's not in your favor, some persons are of the opinion that as much as they may tend to agree with what the former governor has just confirmed, that the judicial system as we have it today is corrupt with judges and lawyers and has made the system completely, you know, an expensive commodity affordable for the rich. Some are saying that where has it been post-election, where Nigerians came out to express the rascality and technicalities that the judiciary, you know, deployed, especially with the handling of the post-election tribunal cases, where Nigerians even contributed to the cause by putting out posters and billboards saying all eyes on the judiciary, as it were. Where was he at the time? Why is he coming out now, 2 years into the Bola Ahmed, you know, administration, to talk about the rot within the system? Could it be that he's saying this out of a mere feeling of being abandoned recklessly by the administration, or that he's desperate, seeking for some sort of relevance? What's your take on that?
I can easily tell you where he was.
Please go ahead.
He was sitting and waiting for his ministerial nomination to come through.
Say that again.
He was waiting for his ministerial nomination to come through. That's why he wasn't joining us in saying all eyes on the judiciary. That's why he wasn't speaking up at that point. And it's again back to what I said earlier, in that this cycle of it's only cheating when I'm not benefiting, right? And it seems to be our culture in Nigeria, even down to everyday people, everyday interactions. You know, there's a certain treatment for those who have money. The security at the gate, certainly he asks less questions when you're driving a nice Benz than when you're driving a Camry. Do you understand? So there's this culture of, if you can pay enough, the rules are flexible. The rules are, you know, it depends on who they are being applied to. And it's not a new concept. I know there's an author who recently wrote a book, one of very few books in the history of this country to be banned, which is a problem in itself. And that book was aimed at targeting the judiciary, exposing with dates and names and facts to support it, and somehow attempted. The man himself was arrested for writing a book, locked up. A few people stepped out to support him. I don't remember hearing the former governor's name among those who fought for his freedom. So this concept of the judiciary is not new. And it seems like every time it's brought forward by a different person, we all go, oh, wow, this is a problem, this is a problem. But we're not sitting down to really ask ourselves that what is our role in solving the problem as Nigerians. We can see that there's a problem. But if all Nigerians are going to do is sit at home, criticize, tweet, and say, oh, this is a problem, this is a problem, then we are going to be doomed to face the same thing, until people wake up to the fact that we all have a role to play in fixing this problem. And in that regard, I guess maybe I do agree with Mr. El-Rufai, because I have listened to some of his talks about how the power is with the people, and the people ultimately decide their own leaders. So in that regard, I do agree with him, right?
All right. Now, while we tend to agree with him that, yes, what he said were actually correct, and of course, putting it side by side with your submission that when it is not favorable, then it is, you know, cheating on your part. At what point did the judiciary get to this level where it now becomes so obvious that so many people, even parents these days, are not even happy to see their children go study law in school? At what point did it get to this point?
There's hardly ever a point where everything changes. A society evolves, and our society has been taking steps towards that. We have slowly lost touch of certain values that we used to believe. Like, we used to look up to men of integrity. We used to look up to men of honor. I remember there are certain luminaries that we hold in high regards, the Awolowo, the people who really stood for something and fought for this country. Patriots. Gone are those days now. Now it is simply who has money, who has power. We will worship anybody as a society who has money. We don't ask ourselves, how did they get it? We don't ask ourselves, what values are these people, stewing forward? But we simply focus on power and influence, and we seem to just all worship at the altar of those things. And it is a slow degradation of our society. But by no means is the situation hopeless. I believe in the heart of every Nigerian there's that yearning for something more. The thing is, we are yet to find a channel to put all of that hope. We had little sparks of it when we had the NSAS movement. There's a whole generation. Nigeria is 70% youth. There's a whole generation of young people who know that, okay, the generation before, certain elements have not helped our society. It is now on us. What we need now is a popular movement that people can rally around, that can help them. And we saw that with the OB campaign. That was what that was. It wasn't really, in many ways, the OB campaign was bigger than OB in himself. It was an opportunity, an expression of that hope, that yearning for balance, for equality, for a better future. And I believe that still exists, and we need to find a way to harness that, and we need to push it forward so we can actually bring in people that can change our society.
All right, now let's go into the issue of the NJC, because if the judiciary has reduced itself to this level, the former governor also fingered them out, because they are, at the helm of affairs to be able to make sure core mandates are established when it comes to disciplinary oversight, and of course citing inconsistent judgments, opaque judicial appointment, and minimal consequences for errant judges as key factors to contributing to the judicial loss of integrity. So where is the NJC in all of this?
They should be policing their own. They are the Constitution allows for that level of policing among the judiciary to ensure that to call out the judges. But the problem is the element of policing itself has become corrupt.
So they've been roped in the mess.
They've been roped in the mess. Very much like our society now. If you jump a red light and if you meet a police officer who is open to such, you can get away with it. You don't have to face the full consequences. So once the policing system within any sphere of governance has been, in many ways influenced, you cannot get fairness. And that's what we're suffering from. But there is still hope. The truth is, we as Nigerians, I think we often lie to ourselves that everything will work out fine. And that's a lie. Everything will work out fine if we work it out ourselves. Anybody that looks across the world will understand that countries with better odds than us have failed. They have become dictatorships. They have gone with greater reserves of oil, with less demographical division. They have become pariah states. They have suffered greater losses, right? So we're not guaranteed that everything will be fine. But if we do take action, everything can be fine. But it's not a guarantee.
Now, let's look at the 2023 election, because for me personally, that was like a litmus test to show if our judicial system were actually working, especially for aggrieved parties. And the 2023 election saw a large gamut of young Nigerians, both within and outside the shores of country, who were willing to come back home to cast their ballot. And of course, waited to see the outcome of the post-election tribunal. From what we saw, do you think that the image of the judiciary, as it has been enmeshed in this, saga right now, can be somewhat redeemed?
I believe it can, but maybe not by its own self. I had a conversation with somebody on Sunday, and we were looking at how Nigeria can work, because you look at appointments that are happening in the National Electoral Commission right now, and Some of them are card-carrying members of parties, right? So you're already seeing the seeds being planted for the next election that will give us problems. We already know that the judiciary as it is cannot 100% be relied on. But what I was trying to explain to him was that there is no government, right, that doesn't need a thread of legitimacy, right? Nobody wants to be a full-blown dictator. One, because you become a pariah in the international community, and it's clear to everyone that you are 100% illegitimate. So those rising up against you can be vocal, they can be, they can be more intent, they can do anything. Shall we say, an overthrow of an illegitimate government is applauded by everybody. So there's no government that doesn't need that thread of legitimacy. What does that mean for us? It means that you can never cheat 100% in a way that everybody will know. So what then is the solution? Every Nigerian that can vote should come out and vote. At that point, when it is very, very clear that the election is going one way, you cannot usurp the will of the people when it comes out in force and in mass. Because if you do that, you are very well declaring yourself a dictator. And nobody wants to be that. Especially not in a country as divided as Nigeria is. Because the moment you do that, you will face serious consequences both at home and internationally. So the only saving grace in all of this, whether it is to combat the corruption in the judiciary, in the electoral commission, is in the hands of every Nigerian who needs to prepare for the election in 2 years because their life depends on it.
So while preparing for the next election, the former governor talked about the institution's independence. It's almost very impossible for us to see the judiciary working on its own without interfering with the executive. So what can be done, especially with regards to the independence of the judicial arm of government running on its own without being interfered or influenced, as it were, by the executive?
As much as possible, finance is a very important area.
Should the executive be financing the judicial system?
No.
But we saw that, a few months back, where this same administration was seen giving bogus salaries and, of course, going as far as making it look very lucrative for them. So at what point can we be able to separate these two entities so that they fund themselves and function independently?
There needs to be a complete separation of the judiciary in terms of the finance aspect. Because if me and you are friends and I call you an independent person, but you rely on me for everything, all your bills, it doesn't have to be said that I can influence everything you do, because if not, you will go hungry. Do you understand? You will be uncomfortable. And so that's what we have. The Electoral Commission often has to get funding from the government in power. Certain key individuals are appointed by the government in power. The judiciary is in part funded. So there needs to be an amendment in the Constitution that gives these people direct funding that cannot be influenced at all in any way by whoever is sitting in the presidency. They need to have that autonomy. They need to have fiscal autonomy so that they can take certain action.
So what practical steps needs to be taken in terms of the amendment of the Constitution? Is it more like a restructuring we are talking about, or what exactly in a layman's language?
I think passing certain changes to the Constitution is important, but another thing that has just occurred to me that I think is even more important is putting an end to the fact that I, as governor, can just wake up and decide to buy all the judges' cars and say, no, it's not corruption, it's just...
but we don't see that in other civilized climes of the world, where a governor will just wake up and buy cars for judges. So at what point did we get to that point where it becomes a norm? Nobody raises eyebrow.
Nobody bats an eye. No, absolutely nobody bats an eye. They just do these things. So these are even the illegal channels by which there is that influence being put. Forget about the official funding, right?
Yes.
Those illegitimate need to be struck out. There needs to be an end to the fact that you can just gift judges certain things. And then also in terms of declaration of assets of key people in Nigeria, that needs to be clearly done. But in truth, let me tell you, all of these things are fantastic and we can theorize about them. But it is almost like telling the thief to go to the police station. Do you understand? You cannot expect that the very individuals who are benefiting for this system will be the ones who will pass bills and legislation.
So it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible creating that change under this administration?
Within the current system, beyond administration, right? The APC has cut across different people.
When you say beyond this current system, are you talking about the crop of judges at the NJC, or what system are you talking about? Is it at the judiciary level or the executive level, or the ruling political class that we have today? What system are you referring to?
The ruling political class, the individuals, the systems, the beliefs at the core. Because we all know that there's no difference between most of the political parties. We all know that there is none. One day you are here, today you are here. You had people who went to PDP, went back to APC, came back to PDP, and then bounced back to APC. There is no ideological difference. It is simply we. What if you side with me, we. What is in it for you? What is in it for me? That's all it is. That's politics today. So Nigerians need to listen with their ears open. Who sounds different? What gives us a little bit of hope that this might be a different way of doing things, and let's try it. And guess what? Even if that one fails, in 4 years we send in another person. If we keep sending them packing every 4 years, at one point we'll land on the right one. We certainly have not got, we've got little sparks of light since our independence, right? But we need to keep trying.
As much as the 2023 election is just around the corner, perhaps just 2 years from now, are you saying Nigerians should wait for the next election? Because you said something earlier that it has gotten to a point where someone will sit down and tell you, I will steal from you, go to court. Perhaps maybe because he knows the judicial system is compromised. And I have had opportunities at different times where I listen to spaces where certain persons, allege a particular appointee to be in control of the judiciary. So what do you make out of that kind of system? Do we have to wait for the next election to have the right crop of leaders that will be able to influence policies that will enhance the judicial system? Should we all fold our hands and wait for the next election? What can we do right now in preparation to that period?
Parties have just had, I will speak for Lagos State, parties have just had their local government primaries right now. An election is coming up. Yes, right. An election is coming up. Vote in that election. The thing is to play a role actively. I will take it back to student union politics, right? Because that's the one I know and I have experienced. As a politician, then, I only cared about the people, particularly, who were voting. Does that make it? The average politician is the same. They only care, they only look after the people who play a role, the people who are outspoken, the people who are participating in any sphere of the political process, not just voting, but in being willing to recall certain members of the electorate, to go around and to sign petitions to recall your local government chairman, to recall your House of Rep member, to recall your senator. If you're not pleased, by the time across the Senate, 3 people go home because the people said enough is enough, everybody's back will be straight. They'll say that there's another voice that we must listen to, not just the voice of those who are political, big wigs, right? So people need to understand that there is nobody coming to save Nigeria. And until people wake up to that fact, nothing will change. Unfortunately, poverty has been so weaponized that the people can't see clearly, right? But the suffering should be enough to wake us up. Our people collected 5,000 for the last election. Look at the way they are suffering today. Is it not true? Is everybody not paying ×3 for everything, ×4? On top of the 5K you collected? That should be enough to make everybody's eye clear and wake up to the responsibility that there's a high price to pay if we don't get these things right. That's my hope.
All right, as we sail home, what's your take, your last take on the issue that has to do with, because I had an opportunity of having a guest here who joined us virtually, and the moment I mentioned that, okay, we have a legal professional here who will be giving us perspective from the legal angle, he rolled his eyes. So it means that they are all one and the same. So in coasting home, what's your take as regards the legal profession generally?
I believe there's a lot of hope there, I believe we have to have hope. There are lawyers out there who are working tirelessly.
Nigerians have been long saying it go better, so you are saying the same thing. We have hope.
No, the difference is I say it go better if we work for it. That's what I'm saying. I'm adding a condition to it go better.
Okay.
I'm not promising anybody that life will be fantastic. In fact, we can end up like, God forbid, all these other countries in Africa that are at war. There's nothing that stops it from going that way. The only thing that will stop it is the people themselves when they stand up and put an end to this system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dakpo Adaramewa, for giving us your 2 cents on the matter. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Mr. Dakpo Adaramewa. He is a social affairs analyst. We really appreciate your time, and of course, thank you so much for watching. The program, of course, continues shortly as we'll be handing you over now to Benin Network Studios.